Jackson State dominated Southern in the Boombox Classic, and as we expected, that domination started in the trenches. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Norfolk State's quarterback situation. I think it's pretty cut and dry. I don't believe Jalen Daniels will be the starting quarterback now that Otto Kuhns has returned from suspension. I don't think that he passed his audition, nor do I feel like he was really given the chance. But we'll get into that at the end of the episode. We kick it off with a two-part, a double feature back-to-back about the Boombox Classic. We'll start off by looking from the perspective of the victors, Jackson State, and then in segment 2, we'll look at Noah Bodden because I did feel like he had a better day than first off, he wasn't even supposed to play, but he had a better day than I expected when I did see him come in. But let's kick it off with Jackson State because I want to reflect on a conversation I had on Twitter with Big Bulldog Ty, right? I want to get exactly what she said. I also wanted to get the @ right. She's obviously Alabama A&M affiliated, but I put out a tweet about Jackson State winning in the trenches and how this game could come down to the trenches. I shouldn't have said the term come down, but I'm glad that she questioned me about it because it gave me a chance to kind of articulate it in a better way. It was a clip from the show. And I think that if you check out the show, excuse me, I think I dropped my mic a little bit, but it was a clip from the show. And in the show, it made perfect sense. But on Twitter isolated, I could see how my complete message wasn't understood, right? But she said, if it comes down to Jackson State in the trenches, then my expectations were too high. I can't find the tweet right now, but that's a paraphrasing of it. And my response was, it's not going to come down to the trenches, even though that's what I said in the video. Like, that's how it was clipped up. But it's not coming down to the trenches, but I believe that this is where they win the game. And when you go through and you watch the Boombox Classic 2024, that's where it started. I do believe that Jackson State dominated this game. I don't know if there was a moment past the first quarter in which I thought that Southern could possibly come up with the victory. I expected Jackson State to win because I think that they're just the better team, which is really was the conversation that her and I had on Twitter. But the domination starts here. This is where they start to win the game. And you get to our player of the game, Joshua Nobles. Joshua Nobles was fantastic. He had 6 tackles on the day, 2.5 sacks. I thought he had 3, right? I had him at 3 solos, but at the end of the day, they said 2.5, and that was for 17 sack yards. But then he also, in addition to that, he also had 2 quarterback hits. So you're looking at a guy who was consistently impacting the quarterback, whether it was Teaser, whether it was Noah Bodden. You looked at Joshua Nobles, who was a player I highlighted after the ULM game as a new addition for Jackson State that's making a lot of noise. Nothing about Saturday changed my mind. Joshua Nobles was clearly my player of the game. He dominated in the trenches, which is exactly where I thought Jackson State would win the game at, offensively and defensively. And if you look at Bodden, Teaser, whenever they were passing the ball, the club was always around. You couldn't miss it. You always seen he had his hand up, boom, there go the club. You look, it's 2, it's Nobles, right? Like that was, to me, the most impactful player along that defensive front for the Tigers. So I think it's ironic that our player of the game is there, but then again, it could be because the player of the game is there that you see such a domination in the trenches. One thing that surprised me is that Jackson State, Southern had a couple of tackles for a loss. They had 4 of them. That did kind of surprise me. Even though I did think Jackson State ran the ball well, I don't think the yardage really adds up to that. Irv Mulligan and JD Martin came back. They both ran the ball for more than 10 times, but neither had a super high yards per carry. Mulligan had 3.9. I thought he ran better than 3.9. If you just go through the flow of the game, if you're not worried about the box score and you just watch it, I think that he had a lot of impactful runs. I think he had a lot of good runs. You immediately noticed it. You immediately noticed he had 2 catches, or excuse me, he had 2 plays for him, 1 a catch and 1 a rush to start off the game. Irv Mulligan is back. I think that this was kind of a ramp up, and as time goes on, you'll see him become the Irv Mulligan of old. I thought last year 5 was a great player. I really did. I he was probably my favorite guy on that offense. And if he comes back like that again, he'll be my favorite player on that Jackson State offense for a second year in a row. But this to me was just a ramp up. And it's beautiful because you have Grambling next week. You had Jackson State last week. Or I guess you have Grambling this week. You had Jackson State last week. This is the right time to get you a little bit of a ramp up. You're ramping up against SWAC opponents before you go into SWAC play. Always confusing, but I do like to give that acknowledgement out there because of it. But overall, Kelby Givens, what'd he do? Givens didn't do much this game. He wasn't impactful. And I don't say this to go at him. This is about the trenches and how you want to dominate in the trenches. That's what he did. That's what he did. And to me, that was a key to stopping Southern's defense. Then offensively, nothing has shown me that Southern can run the ball. Nothing through 3 games, no matter who they were facing, has shown me that Southern can run the ball. I thought that they ran the ball a little bit better against Savannah State when Teasy came in the game, but that could have 2 reasons. One, you had the threat of his legs that they were worried about. Momentum started building. And then also, hey, Savannah State's defense was on the field a lot. They were on the field a lot because that offense could get nothing going outside of that one play. And that play happened 3 plays into the drive. So Savannah State's defense was, Savannah State's defense was consistently on the field. They could have been worn down by that point. But and even then, it wasn't phenomenal running. I just don't think that Southern has showcased anything to make you really believe that they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think a lot of that starts with the offensive line. Because I like a guy like Kendrick Grimes, right? But let's look at the numbers specifically when you're looking at the yards per carry, when you're looking at Southern. Excuse me. So Kendrick Grimes had 8 carries for 19 yards. 8 carries for 18 yards. That's 2.3 yards per carry. CJ Russell had 3 for 9. That's 3 yards per carry. Tease It, before he got injured, was 3 for 14. 3 for 8. There's probably a sack in there somewhere, to be honest. He's probably 2 for 14. But regardless, that's quarterback runs. Dylan, 4 for 5, 1.3. You're looking at Biden, he had 3 for negative 11. But really, that's 15 yards of sack yards. So 1 for 4, if you take that out on 2 sacks. Like when you basically go through it, this wasn't a strong passing attack or strong rushing attack. This was not a good rushing attack. And even when you take out the sack yardage, they still don't hit 3 yards per carry. With the sack yardage, they're at 1.4. 1.4 yards per carry. When you're talking about the trenches, it doesn't come down to it, but it starts there. Southern averaged 1.4 yards per carry. You take the sacks out of it, you're probably talking about 2.5. Maybe you get up to 3 yards per carry. Maybe you had one rusher who was really effective and I'm using effective as a very low bar. I'm talking about 3 yards per carry when I use that term. All right. This was not good. This was not good in the slightest. So Mulligan may have had 3.9 yards per carry, but to me, he ran the ball way better than that. Jackson State's offensive line did a good job getting pushed. There was a couple of tackles for a loss against Mulligan and Martin. Defensively, Southern got nothing going. I thought that Biden and Tease-It were always under pressure. They were frequently getting people in the backfield. Joshua Nobles is still a really good player. I can't wait to watch him. That rush defense for Jackson State versus Grambling next week is going to be something to watch. That's going to be the one where I really start looking. And it's early in the year. We'll see how great guys' run defenses and rush offenses are. But as of right now, Southern poses no challenge. I don't know if Southern has the strength on the offensive or defensive line. If Givens doesn't get going, I don't know if that defensive line is going to do too much. I have to watch more Southern. I have to see more Southern. I think it'd be unfair to grade them already. I was listening to an interview by Cam Jordan, and he talked about how he doesn't really know his team until 4 games into the year. They're 3 right now. We'll see what they're going to be. One thing I will say that did surprise me is the performance of Noah Biden, the quarterback who came in. He was a starting quarterback to start the year, and he ended up finishing this game. We'll get into all of that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. And 5 Hour Energy is a perfect pick-me-up for any day. Sometimes you want to get ahead of it. Like, hey, I already know I'm going to be a little lethargic. I'm going to go ahead and take this shot of 5 Hour Energy. Get me through a rough morning just so I can get into the rest of my day. And then sometimes you're looking at, I just hit a wall and I need to get over this wall. Go ahead and take a shot of 5 Hour Energy. They have a multitude of flavors. Watermelon, berry, tropical burst, grape. Like, they have them all you have to do is go to your local convenience store. They'll be right there by the cash register. Go ahead and pick you up some. But if you do it online, use the code locked on CFB, you can get 20% off your order. Now, that's not able to be paired with any other subscriptions or any other deals. But if you're just going and getting a pack of 5 Hour Energy, you can go ahead and go to 5hourenergy.com. That is 5hourenergy.com. Take advantage of the energy shot that has been keeping people energized for the last 2 decades. Go to 5hourenergy.com. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, go ahead and follow my shirt and go to Locked on Saints. Shout out Ross Jackson. He had on the burgundy suit the other day. I called him like, hey, man, suit tough. I know exactly what color it was because, camera supply and whatnot. But go check him out. He had a good show about the dominating victory that was the New Orleans Saints over the Dallas Cowboys. But yes, let's keep it in Louisiana. This team won. New Orleans. That team didn't, but I was impressed with how Noah Biden looked. Would I say it was a winning performance? No, but it was better than I thought. And I think that if he wasn't, I would say if he wasn't playing from behind, but I thought that he made a lot of plays, but I don't know how many of the plays he made were in the crucial moments, right? So when you look at Biden, but we're going to keep it positive. We're not even going to look at all of that. But when you look at Biden's overall stats for the day, Biden went 17 of 29 for 352 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, right? So I think that stat line tells a really full story. What it tells is decently efficient, right? 17 to 29, that's probably close to 60% if you're looking at it. 352 yards, that's a lot of yardage. We're going to get to how he operated with the deep ball. I'm too much of a math nerd for me to just say it's like 60%, so I have to look it up. My apologies. Then I'll get right back into my zone. 58.6, so you round at the 59. It was close. Shout out to me. But anyway, Noah Biden looked better than I thought that he would against Jackson State. He looked better against Jackson State than he did against Savannah State. That was really surprising. I thought that he had a multitude of really good throws down the field that were eye-catching, right? And I can't say he performed better than I expected necessarily because I didn't expect to see him because Teaser was starting. Then the redshirt freshman ended up getting hurt. So now there was no more Teaser time, and it's back to Biden, right? But when I seen him come in, he performed better because of the deep shots that he had, right? Take these numbers with a grain of salt. They do a passing distribution on all of the live stats. It's one of the cooler things that I feel like you see on stats. So, but on live stats, if you go and you click a player, it takes a lot to get there. But moral of the story is you can go find how they fared at different sections of the field: middle right, middle left, middle, right? Deep left, deep right, deep middle. Like you have that. And when you look at passes that were 15 and up, Biden went 6 of 6 for 213 yards. Like I said, take that with a grain of salt, only because they also said he didn't miss any passes that were beyond the line of scrimmage. That's just not true. But what I can say, numbers aside, whether it was perfection, whether it was more or less than 200 yards, like all of that aside, just visually watching this game, Noah Biden's ability to throw the deep ball was the most impressive thing that I saw from Southern's offense really within 2 games. I was at the Savannah State game and then watched the Jackson State game in full. I thought that Biden's ability to have really good ball placement, 15 plus yards down the field, was impressive. So in cover two, that zone in between the safety and the cornerback dropping, that's called a hole shot, right? Like it's a spot where it's kind of unguarded. But I don't want to say he hit a bunch of hole shots because it wasn't always cover two. There was times where it was where the guy, or it wasn't always vacant, right? Like sometimes it was man coverage, back shoulder, right? Man coverage just over the top. Sometimes it was between two defenders. It was just a really good performance when you break down what Noah Biden was able to do. And of everything he did, it was in the deep shots that he told his story. That's where he made his money. He had 5 throws of over 20 yards. I'm sure some of those were catch and runs, but the majority of them were deep shots. Majority of those were deep shots. Would I say it's a winning performance? No, because it was only 1 touchdown. It was 2 interceptions. And I don't think you can ever have a winning performance when you have more interceptions than touchdowns. So I don't think I walked away changing my tune on the quarterback situation in Baton Rouge. I would just say that I liked what he did more than I thought that I would. It's still complimentary, but the reason I have to kind of bring it back down to earth is right now I'm recording this before the SWAC media call. I know, I think it happens on Mondays. It'll be out before you hear this, but as I'm recording it, it's not out yet. So I don't know what Teezit's prognosis is. If he can be back next week, I still put Teezit in the game next week. That's the reason I feel the need to have this conversation. Because if Teezit is available, he is my quarterback. And I understand it's to a degree, it's kind of funny. Not the injury, not the absence or anything like that. But it's kind of funny that Coach Graves talked about, yeah, we got to make sure that Biden's ready. You know, we're not done with him and not coming here, man. I hope so. Like, I think I may have knocked on wood. And knocking on wood stuff ain't worked this time. But then the next game, he doesn't even miss an entirety of a game. Teaser gets injured midway through the second quarter. And now it's Biden's time. This could have been an opportunity for him to steal his job back. I don't think he did it. There's still a reason that I wanted him to be benched. There's a reason that you took him out in back-to-back games. And yes, he could have just had bad performances, but there's a reason you wanted to rock with Teezit. And to me, Teezit is still young. If he can play, because I wasn't sure how bad it was. And I didn't want to give him a overly bad like injury when I don't know. So I'm going to keep it relatively positive and say that he can be back this week, maybe next week. Like he'll probably miss a week. But anyway, if he's able to play in the upcoming game, I am rolling with Teezit because he's young. And I still think that Zay Teezit can be the future of Southern. I still think that Zay Teezit has the talent to be their starting quarterback for a few years. That's not something you're going to get with Biden. So because of that, I want to roll with the guy that I think can be my future. Even though Biden performed better than expected, that's not enough for me. So as we push forward, speaking of somebody who was trying to audition, because that's the position that Biden would be in if he gets any starts. This is his job to now reclaim. He can reclaim that job. Don't get me twisted, but I don't think he did it against Jackson State. But Jalen Daniels was in a position where he had to try to claim a job. I don't think he did it. When Otto Kuhns returns to Norfolk State, which should be this week, I expect him to be the starting quarterback. Everything has shown me that, and I'll explain a little bit more as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start taking the Saints over. And I'm smelling myself. I ain't gonna lie. And I need to chill. But I ain't felt this good in a couple of years. So you need to go ahead and go to FanDuel. The Saints have a new offense. Go ahead and check out Derek Carr. Alvin Kamara, I think, is going to be a really good bet for a lot of people. If you're talking about yardage, I think he's going to have a lot of really good games in 2024. So just take that as my little piece of advice. But yeah, FanDuel. The NFL season's here. You got Monday Night Football tonight. The Eagles versus the Falcons. If you're listening to this live, then you will probably take this leading into the show or into the game in about 10, 15 minutes before the games come on. the game comes on. But regardless, go ahead and make yourself some money at FanDuel.com on week 3, on college football, on the NBA futures, on the WNBA who has the playoffs coming in, the MLB, everything. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on. And if you put down a $5 bet, you get 3 weeks free, 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket, and you're going to want that. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I have no expectations that Jalen Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback now that Otto Kuhns has returned. By all markers, this is supposed to be a 4-game suspension for Kuhns. You have to remember that while a lot of your teams have played 3 games, Norfolk State and FAMU, they played more, right? So actually, I don't think FAMU played this week, so they're at 3. But Norfolk State played their 4th game this week against Hampton. And as I go through the totality of what Jalen Daniels was able to do and allowed to do, nothing tells me that they see him as a starting quarterback. If they do, if Jalen Daniels is the starting quarterback when Otto Kuhns returns, it is because Jalen Daniels won that job in the preseason. But the same reason I don't think he won that job in the preseason is the same reason that I don't think that if he was auditioning as the starter over these last 4 weeks, that he won that. They don't trust him. They don't trust him. They don't try to use him. Let's go through the stats, right? And it's kind of a shame because I saw sparks against FAMU. I saw some sparks against FAMU. There was a drive where they allowed him to pass the ball a little bit. You can be a run-first offense, but still utilize your quarterback. Anyway, against FAMU, he went 7 for 9 for 142 yards. Against East Carolina, he went 8 for 19, 71 yards and an interception. Virginia State, he went 14 to 21, 2 touchdowns and an interception. And then against Hampton, he had 6 for 12, he had 200-something yards against Virginia State. And then against Hampton, he went 6 for 12, 46 yards and a touchdown. But here's my thing. You look at the amount that they have him passing. You look at how bad they were getting beaten that Hampton game, and they weren't trying to pass him. So now this is either scheme or this is a lack of trust. Which one is it? This is either scheme or it is lack of trust. Because to me, when you have your quarterback throwing 9 times, I'll excuse it that time because you were dominating a lot of that game. Your running game was bullying FAMU. They were bullying FAMU. But now you go into a game like Hampton and you're losing. Why are you only throwing 5, I think, maybe 6 passes in the first half? You got to get down a lot before you start throwing. That's not effective. So now I either have to assume you don't trust your quarterback because he wasn't projected to be your starter. So, okay, you don't trust your quarterback. You're trying to limit it. Fine, whatever. It is what it is. You haven't lost a single conference game yet. Otto Kuhns can come in. He's the preseason offensive player of the year. I don't know if any offensive player has just absolutely ran their out-of-conference schedule this year. So you still have an opportunity for him to win that award at the end of the season. Maybe you see a change. But if it's scheme and this is just what you want, it's not going to work. You have to allow your quarterback to play a little bit. You have to. I don't care if it's Jalen Daniels. I don't care if it's Otto Kuhns. I don't care if you go get a new quarterback. If you don't allow your quarterback to throw in situations, everybody's going to see you're predictable, and there's going to be more games like Hampton. It's going to be a lot of games like Hampton where we know you're running. And if we know you're running, we're going to stop it. Unless we just have a absolutely pillow soft run defense, we're going to load the box. We're going to stop you, and we're going to force you to throw. And when you do throw, it's going to be 3rd and 11. And when it's 3rd and 11 and you're throwing the ball, yeah, Jalen Daniels probably doesn't look that great because they can heat him up. They know how to play coverage. Like Jalen Daniels is not being, in my opinion, Jalen Daniels is not trusted. I don't think that he had great performances, right? Like, I don't think he had a great performance against Hampton, FAMU. But at the same time, I don't know how much of an opportunity he was given. It goes hand in hand. I don't know if he made the most of his opportunities. I actually thought he played well against FAMU. I'm not going to lie to you. I did. I saw sparks in there, and we never talked about it, but there was one drive where it looked like perfect football, and he was a part of that drive. I know the story was the run game, but there was a drive in which Jalen Daniels threw the ball a couple of times, and it looked like perfect balanced football. And I think it was still run first. This was a month ago, so I don't remember exactly. Was that a month ago? Yeah, almost. Huh? Golly. Um, but yeah, we got to be better than that, guys. We got to be better than that. We'll see. We'll see. You have 4 weeks to make the most of it, and I don't think that they really gave you the opportunity. To me, that tells me either the scheme is the scheme or they just are waiting for Otto Kuhns. I'm leaning towards the latter. We'll see, though. Now, on tomorrow's episode, we're looking at Darnell Dees because he is my player of the week. The Bethune-Cookman kick returner had 2 touchdowns off kickoffs. Hey, man, I'm telling you right now, that man's professional stock is shooting up. That man's professional stock is shooting up, and we'll be looking at that first thing in the morning. So come back with me, 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. We're going to ride. Until next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.